There are a great number of gaps in our understanding of Eorzean history. Each calamity save the seventh has leveled every civilization in the land, and writing chronicles has been a luxury that the survivors of the subsequent umbral eras could ill afford. It is for this reason that we know almost nothing of the time before the rise of the Allagan Empire, or of the period between its fall and the era of the warring nations of Nim, Amdapor, and the Arch. The origins of Ishgard were not buried by a realm-wide calamity, however, but by the shame of its founders. And although we discovered much of the truth to this dark history through the story of Heavensward, there is still at least one missing piece. Just over 1,000 years ago, the first King Thordan and his knights murdered the great worm Ratatoska, and between them split and devoured her eyes. It was onto these knights that Nidhogg declared his eternal retribution, and no other peoples or problems of Eorzea have moved him since. He has shown no interest in the wars of Greater Eorzea, not even at the call of Midgardsormr to the Battle of Silvertear Skies. He has eyes only for the killers of Ratatoska. The masterstroke of his retribution is that each of the children of these knights carry in their blood the traces of Ratatoska's essence passed down the line, and this makes them vulnerable to conversion. Just a sip of dragon's blood and they are transformed into thralls of the Horde. This revelation undermines the plight of the heretics as mere puppets of Nidhogg, but it also undermines the Ishgardian aristocracy. The sons and daughters of the high houses thought themselves privileged in being descended from the ancient knights of Thordan, but the essence of Ratatoska pervades the knights of highborn and lowborn alike. That is to say, every single child of modern Ishgard is descended from the murderers of Ratatoska. This raises one important question, and I'm always surprised when it is overlooked. The old Ishgard, founded on the ideals of the union of Saint Shiva and Hraesvelga, must have had more citizens than the dozen murderers of Ratatoska. Evidence of a grand civilization are clear throughout Dravania and the Churning Mists, but none of these presumably thousands of people have left a trace in the region since the advent of the Dragonsong War. Not a single modern Ishgardian is descended from any of these thousands, or if they were, it is only because one of their great-great-great-great-grandmothers were coupled with one of Thordan's knights. So what happened to the other 99% of Old Ishgard? Were they immediately decimated by Nidhogg, leaving none but the Knights of Thordan alive? I personally find this hard to believe. It is not Nidhogg's style of revenge to merely kill his victims. If he held all of these people culpable, he would have been sure that they survived so that he could forever torture them and their ancestors, in the same way that he does the ancestors of the knights. Alternatively, if he had decided to give them a quick death for the lesser crime of belonging to the same barbaric race as Ratatoska's murderers, he surely would have extended that sentence to the rest of the peoples of Eorzea, given that they all essentially lived in his backyard, and it would have been a fairly simple task for a Great Worm. But he didn't. So the question remains, what happened to the 99% of Old Ishgard? With this question in mind, I would like to take us further south to see what was happening during this same transitional period of 1,000 years past under the Black Shroud. The modern Ishgardians are not the first peoples made to answer for the sins of their fathers. A labyrinthian city of tunnels and caves named Gelmora curled underneath the Twelveswood at this time, harbouring the progeny of the survivors of Amdapor, banished from the surface by the elementals, furious over their abuse of magic and the wars which it brought upon the land. These Elezen had been changed over the long centuries underground into what we now know of as the Duskwite, but it was during this period, 1,000 years past, that the elementals began once again to tolerate people to enter the Shroud, and the Gelmoran Duskwites supposedly began to emerge. The elementals conceived emissaries, the ageless Pajal, whom can commune with and carry the will of the elementals to the people. It is conspicuous that the elementals did not trust the Duskwite to mother the Pajal, however, instead choosing the relatively freshly immigrated Hyur. After several generations of living in deference to the elementals under the tutelage of the Pajali, the peoples of the Shroud were allowed to build the quiet and conservative city of Gridania, a state burgeoning with Elezen, but with very few Duskwite. If all the Elezen of Gelmora had become Duskwite over the centuries, why are they a minority in Gridania? Where did all these wildwood come from? We have here, during the very same period of 1,000 years past, an enormous population of elves and wildwood disappearing from Ishgard and another appearing in the Twelveswood. This could be a coincidence. It could be that all of Old Ishgard but Haldreth and his few brothers in arms were annihilated by Nidhogg's horde before they could flee. It could be that the huge population of pale-skinned Elezen that appeared in the Shroud at the same time came from elsewhere. Or it could be that the citizens of Old Ishgard, disgusted with their traitorous king, decided to leave their homes rather than follow their former leaders into an unjust and endless war. It could be that they had heard that a migrating tribe of Hior had wandered into the Twelveswood, the home of the Elezen's Amdapori ancestors, and rather than being banished or slaughtered by the elementals, had been offered a bridge and olive branch in the form of the Pajali. It could be that the Elezen of Old Ishgard saw an opportunity for a fresh start, severed their ties with the Knights of Thordan entirely, and allowed this dark history to fall out of memory. Gelmorra fell into ruin as Gridania began to flourish, but the relationship between Duskwight and elementals was not so easily resolved. We know that many Duskwights still live in caves and ruins, preferring a nomadic or vagrant lifestyle away from the cities, including Gridania. If it was that they had made peace with the elementals, I believe that the Pajali would have been born of the Duskwight and not of the Hior. Gridania would be populated by the former Gelmorrans predominantly, and not by their fair-skinned cousins. This theory is speculative, but I believe it is sound. The pieces fit, the dates more or less match, and it offers us a coherent narrative of the movements of the Elezen across Eorzea. Nidhogg's quarrel is with the murderers of Ratatoska and their descendants. That is to say, only the people that carry her devoured essence in their blood. He had no reason to pursue the innocents of Old Ishgard once they had fled his domain. As for the Duskwights, this theory implies that not all is forgiven and forgotten. Although the elementals might have relaxed their animosity, the majority of the darker Elezen surely continue to mistrust the Gridanians and their reverence of those spirits that caused so much suffering for generations of innocent Gelmorran Duskwights. The fact that the majority of them still avoid this community seems to corroborate the idea. If you have any questions about this theory or about anything else to do with Elezen, with Ishgard or Gridania or the rest of Eorzean history, please feel free to leave them below. If there's anything you'd like me to clarify, I'd be happy to oblige. And similarly, if you have any ideas of your own that might support or challenge mine, I would absolutely love to hear them. Like, comment, subscribe, share with your friends. But until next time, I'm Ethys, and thanks for watching.